The Three Sillies. Once upon a time there was a farmer and his wife who had one daughter, and she was courted by a gentleman. "Wife, daughter, look, a gentleman comes a-courting. He looks rich. He looks handsome." Every evening he stopped to supper, and the daughter was sent to the cellar to draw some cider. One night, just as the daughter turned on the tap, she noticed a mallet in the beans, and she began a-thinking, "Suppose him and me was to be married, and we was to have a teeny tiny son, and he was to grow up to be a fine young man. And suppose our son was to come down into the cellar to draw cider, and the mallet was to fall on his head. What a dreadful thing that would be! Here lies our son, donked by a mallet." And she began a-crying. Well, the girl failed to return with the cider, and finally her mother went down to see what was keeping her. "Look at that horrid mallet," screeched the daughter, and she confessed all that she had been a-thinking. Married, a teeny tiny son, all grown up, donked, drawing the cider, dog dead. "Dear, dear," said the mother, and she began a-crying too. Then after a while the father went down to look for them. "Look at that horrid mallet," screamed the mother, and she told him all that their daughter had been a-thinking. Married, a teeny tiny son, all grown up, drawing the cider, dog dead. "Dear, dear, dear," said the father, and he started a-crying. At last the gentleman got tired of waiting, and he went to draw a sip of cider for himself. And wasn't he surprised to find the farmer and his wife and daughter a-sobbing and screeching and a-swimming in the cellar full of cider. And the gentleman burst out laughing. "Ha, he, ha, ha, he, ha, hardy, hardy, har, ha, he, har, ha, ha, he, har, ha. In all my travels, I've never met three sillies," he said. "Now I shall set out traveling again, and when I can find three sillies who are even sillier than you three, I'll come back and marry your daughter." And the gentleman left them all a-whining worse than before. "Wah, wah, wah! No husband for our daughter. Wah, 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 wah. Wah, wah, no teeny tiny son. Get lost, bozo." After traveling a while, the gentleman came upon an old woman who was teaching her cow to spring onto the roof of her cottage to eat the weeds that were a-growing there. Pay attention, grapefruit. Up you go now, leap onto the roof. Woof! Move? Madam, she's a cow, not a congroof. Cock-a-doodle-doof. The old woman insisted. Listen, you bovine goof, I said. Poof, poof, up on the roof. Woof! Oof, move your hoof. Move? Move! Finally, she got the cow up. Then the old woman fastened a string around the cow's neck and passed it down the chimney and tied the other end to her wrist. She'll be quite safe with this string tied to both of us. She can't fall off the roof without me knowing it. Quite daft, said the gentleman, and he took his leave. Woof! The gentleman hadn't gone far when he was overtaken by a funeral procession, and he heard a dreadful tale. It seemed the old woman's cow had tumbled off the roof, and the weight of the cow had pulled the old woman into the chimney, and she got stuck halfway up and was smothered in soot. I tumbled, I yanked, I smothered. Well, that was the first big silly. Granny McRoot is kaput. She was a hoot. I'll miss that old coot. Brute! The gentleman traveled on and on and on and on and on until he came to an inn at dusk. The inn was so full that the innkeeper put him in a double-bedded room. Here's the room you'll have to share with Ned and his teddy bear. In the morning, the gentleman was surprised to see his roommate hang his trousers on the knobs of his chest of drawers and try to jump into them. He tried over and over and over again, but he couldn't manage it. Look, try it this way, said the gentleman, and he showed the fellow how to put his trousers on. This is how. Wow. Up is on, down is off. The fellow practiced to pop his trousers on and off and up and down until he had quite managed the skill. Then he burst joyfully into song. I sally forth with pants unfurled to share my talent with the world. Well, that was the second big silly. When it comes to getting dressed, I'm the champion. I'm the best. That fellow's mad, Brisket posted. He's a public pest. Put him under arrest. Ned the Nut. The gentleman's travels soon brought him to a village, and outside the village where there was a pond, and around the pond was a crowd of people with rakes and brooms and pitchforks, a whining, a whimpering, and a willing. Whimper, wheeze, weep, wail, whine, sniff, sniff, sniffle. The gentleman asked what was the matter. What, they said, matter enough. The moon's tumbled into the pond, and we can't get her out. The gentleman burst out laughing. Look up into the sky. It's only the moon's reflection, he explained. Hippy hee ha har, hey hee har har hee hee ha ha har ho hee har hee ha hee har ha ho ho har hee. Well, that was dozens of sillies, but before the gentleman could complete his list, the crowd became restive, arrayed, and rustled. Dolt, idiot, varmint, churl, scoundrel, pumpkinhead, giddy up, hoof, hit, sundily, I long to see those sunny sillies back on the farm. Salute. And so he took his leave. The gentleman was heartened by the joyous welcome that awaited him. Dear sweet, smiled little sillies, he said. In my travels I have met dozens of sillies who are far sillier than yourselves. Therefore, I shall keep my promise. Let us be married at once. I'll have a teeny tiny son. She'll be married. They hustled to the chapel. Do I? Yes, 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 yes! After the wedding, all of the guests were invited to collate at the farmhouse. A wop, look, baba, lop, bam, boom. The gentleman went to the cellar to draw jugs of cider so that all could toast with his new bride. Just as the Just as he turned on the tap, the juggling footsteps of the dancers above joggled the mallet loose. Down it fell, delicately donking the gentleman, and it bounced back and then it bounced back and settled itself on the very beam from which it had been dislodged. Stunned, the gentleman keeled over and rolled under the flowing tap. The key of cider had drained into the gentleman before he was discovered by his bride. She hauled him back to the collation. Hee har har, hee hee ho har. Looky here, it seems cassation that this sweet, swollen cider solden sweet, who once sallied forth in search of a sillier sillies, is himself the silliest silly in the land. It wasn't long before the gentleman and his wife were blessed with a child. A handsome lad, just like his dad. Kisses, kisses, kisses for Mama's teeny tiny tussin. Mush. The pressed imagined a brilliant frutal for their son. He'll be a gunners like his father. He'll be a prime minister. He'll be a president. Finally, the stag spoke for himself. When I grow up, I want to be a great big silly, just like my mom and dad. Right on, kid. And so those three sillies set off around the world in search of silly adventures, and they lived forever after in peaceful silliness. The end. Wasn't that a good book? I love that book. And also, goodbye.